Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this episode of A Break in the Clouds with Penny Kelly. You can find her work at pennykelly.com or consciousnessonfire.com. Also here on YouTube at Penny Kelly, and finally on her Patreon at patreon.com/Penny Kelly. Penny, welcome back to the show.
It is good to be here. A little breather in the craziness.
Is there anything crazy going on, Penny? I hadn't noticed.
Yeah. Lots. We're approaching the ridiculous point. And you know what I see, and I've been seeing this for a long time, is mass hysteria. So it's getting worse.
We're getting a little bit of an echo. It's funny, we didn't have it before we were live. Do you maybe have another window open, Penny, with another YouTube maybe in the background?
Let me look. I don't. Oh, you know what?
Okay, let me just mute you while you fix that, Penny. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping here in a moment. So keep going. So folks, thank you so much here for joining us on Friday, this live interactive show. Tonight, we are going to have a little bit of a twist. We're also looking, of course, at the last look-see from Penny Kelly, but we're also going to be discussing here what we've heard and maybe seen here in the last couple of hours and days here, and put that into context for you guys as we pull into next week. Now, next week, of course, I have Bruce Cesal coming back to the show, and I mentioned that because it's going to be a fascinating show again. We're going to be looking at some of the amazing photography and videography that he's taking there of the moon and the craft surrounding the moon. So absolutely fascinating in the context of what's happening here for this conversation as well. And finally, also on the 24th, May Levy. This is going to be her first premiere series on Beyond Mystic. She's been on the show twice already with Mariam Hanin on our Quantum Woo, but this is going to be a May Levy specific series, and I'm excited for that. So please join us on the 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern for that. Okay, hopefully, let me get back to you, Penny here. Let me unmute your mic. How do you sound?
Okay, how's that?
Okay, we're good.
I hear the echo.
You still hear it? Oh, I don't hear it. I do.
Echo. Yeah. Hang on. Let me just look at settings here. Maybe we'll try.
Did you try bringing your speaker volume down just a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, let's try that. It's down pretty low already. Okay.
Check 1, 2.
How about that? Let's see.
You sound good from this end.
I have echo cancellation on. Okay.
So Kate says, I don't hear an echo. Lena says it's okay. Mark says it's okay now, 5x5. Okay.
All right, very good.
Okay. Okay, folks, we have a lot to go through tonight. So I think what I'm going to do is leave the microphone to Penny here as she starts maybe building the narrative around the last look-see. I know you guys might have seen the last show with Jason Ford. Go check that out as well. You'll get more details there. But Penny, let's start there. Start painting the picture of this last look-see and what is important for the audience here tonight.
Okay. So I think there were so many things. There were so many things that were not good in this last look-see that it really ends up being something that I think we just have to get through. We just have to go through it. What I saw was that it gets a little crazier and a little more crazy and a little more crazy as we go through September. And then in like early October, it looked like the entire financial system and the entire government just went down, just down. And I thought, wow, that's almost too much to get your mind around. But then there were people coming out of the woodwork, talking, and it looked like the whole thing hinged on there was no money. And the illusions about the Fed and the illusions about the government are big and massive right now. And so we sort of hit the wall. So a couple things that I thought, I kept trying to see Trump coming back. He wasn't. I mean, he was talking, but he wasn't coming back to our system. And I ended up with the impression that The goal was to take the system down. Period. So that a couple of things that I think the fact that people cannot evict anybody who's not paying rent. I was absolutely delighted to see that some people start paying rent on their own. Nobody's telling them to. And it was, from my point of view, a sign that people are taking charge of what they want to happen, of what outcomes they want to try to generate. And I think that's a fabulous sign. So we can talk about some of the details, but I have to say that at this point in time, if you look at what's happening in the world, and you look at it from the point of view that I'm looking at, which is, how do we come together? How do we work as one people? How do we reach peace? How do we reach a consensus of what we want? What I see happening in the US, in Canada, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, all of Europe, a bunch of places in Eastern Europe, we're coming together. A lot of people want the same thing. They want freedom. They want truth. They want honesty. They want leadership that is, that is honorable, and that we're electing them, so they need to work for us. and that's as close as we've come as a planet to coming together and everybody being kind of on the same page, or very, very close to being on the same page, I think, ever. And I just want to point out to people, that's something that I think we want to remember if we come to a place of peace, that we are all wanting the same thing, that we are all trying to get to the same place, that we're all struggling with the same stuff, and that we're just that close to being able to say, hey, most of the planet is on the same page. Most of the planet is on the same wavelength. And that's a requirement for being able to come together, work together, and really be invited into invited to the table to sit with other civilizations from other planets. And I'm afraid that we're going to miss the moment because everybody's so upset. And we don't want to all come together upset. We want to come together because we all want the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm pointing out how similar all the things that everybody on the planet is struggling for right now. And that's a very powerful thing. So let's just kind of, I don't know that we could act on that very coherently right now because of all the uproar. But just to be aware that, my gosh, we're all working toward the same thing. It's a sign that says, yeah, we can do that. We're capable. So that's kind of wrapping up, where my thinking is now. A couple of other things that I have seen, and I know I'm going to go against the grain here. But I have to say what I see.
Yeah.
So the other day, I was listening to Cliffy. I don't get to listen to very many things because I'm too busy. But he was talking. Was the Next Woo, I think was the name of it. And
Next Level Woo.
Maybe that was it. Next Level Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was it.
Okay.
So and I'm busy, fixing dinner, and he's talking about the Cabal has dates. And I've known about a lot of those dates, for a long time. And I'm like, yup, that's one, yup. and I'm, cooking away. And he says something about November 11th. And that there was going to be something called the Unvarying. And I thought, in my kind of an open state of mind, as soon as he said that, my own knowing popped in, was like, it's going to be the truth about Trump, and a huge, huge disillusionment. And I thought, oh, wow, I hope that that's not the case. That's so many people have all their hopes riding on him. And it was like, oh, no, that, and he went on saying, well, maybe that he said, we're not going to have bodies. We're not going to dig up bodies. So it's probably going to be some kind of archaeological information. And my thought was, no, it's going to be some information that has been buried very successfully. And that would be the final straw that breaks the people's backs or breaks their minds about what's happening in terms of, getting to the truth, getting to the real truth. And there have been some consistent inconsistencies that I've been looking at for quite a while. And so, I put some of those together. And we don't really have answers to those questions. And I have, liked what Trump has been doing, leading us toward, which is this moment of, wow, we're all on the same page, almost everybody on the planet. But I don't think that was necessarily his goal. That's an unintended outcome. But the thing that I was seeing was not very, there's some questions that come up that I think we have to answer as a people. And some of those questions are really, why was he pushing the V shot, so enthusiastically? And he's not a stupid man. He knows he could see something not right there. Why was he able to unrig the 2016 election, but he couldn't unrig the 2020 election? What is that about? There's other bits of information that, that I've been looking at, collecting. It's like, okay. And when you come right down to it, are we getting ready for changes that are happening geologically? Are we thinking about those things at all? Or are we all caught up? Do we see how, like the other day when CNN was on, they were getting on Joe Biden's back, he did this or he didn't do that or whatever. Yeah, the media turns on Biden. That whole thing, my thought was, well, isn't that convenient? Now CNN totally against Biden, totally for Biden, totally against Trump. Why the turn all of a sudden? Is somebody paving the way for Trump to come back as the grand, the grand savior? That if another question I have is, if there is a, how do I say this? Well, I can't even put words to it. It's sometimes knowing comes in and you don't really have words for it. And you just have to sit with that feeling for a bit. So there's some pieces that are just not, they don't fit the whole narrative. And I think that, because I've said from the beginning, maybe not publicly, but I have said to my own family, this is a perfect example of mass hysteria. What you are watching is mass hysteria. And the other day, somebody came out with a thing that says, this is how you get mass psychosis. It was a little, like a cartoon thing. And I thought, oh, wow, somebody's finally saying that. Yes. How do we have a whole planet full of people believing in something that's not real? What do you call that other than mass hysteria?
Mind control.
Yeah. Right. So, and so all of it, if we lose people, if we lose a lot of people, that's tragic. It's a loss of power. Consciousness present on the planet is power. And I don't think we see even a little bit how we are being manipulated back and forth. Okay, think this way, think that way, da da da. Oh, our side's winning. Oh, our side's losing. Do we even begin to see how much we're being manipulated? And is anybody thinking for themselves? I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this concern that if everybody is hoping that Trump will return, and he does, and something in the bottom falls out of that, then what? And then we're busy with people being so sick that we can't even think straight because we're so stretched.
Mm-hmm.
I just lost somebody this morning that was really important to me. And there's things that people don't know about. Well, maybe they are knowing, but they're not talking about how this whole thing is being, this whole situation, we'll call it, the corona situation, how that's being managed. Wow. That's it's if you really read the medicine and the effect of the medicine, and what happens when you take that medicine, it's like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we got a lot of stuff on our plate. The good thing is that we're very close in terms of mindset, as one mind, one people. And I think that's worth noting. How we got there is not something I would like to repeat. It's been a rough ride, probably going to get rougher before enough people lose their naivete, wake up, grow up, and begin to decide for themselves who they're going to listen to. You should be listening to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Okay, so you said at the beginning of this that you're going against the grain now. So I'm reading the comments as you're speaking, and there's a few people who are like, "Whoa, what is she saying? Is she saying that Trump's bad? Is she saying this? Like, what's going on, JC? Tell her the intel, JC."
Yeah,
okay.
That's thanks. I'm glad people are hearing.
Right.
Hang on one second, because it's a pretty serious situation. Yes, I am saying that there are some serious questions that have to be answered. Somebody said to me, well, I thought you loved Trump. I said, you know what? I like what Trump has been doing, but I'm not wedded to the man, and right. I'm not wedded to anything except the truth. And when you get one or two things that don't line up, then you can sort of brush those away. But when you get a half a dozen things that don't line up, it's hard to brush those away.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, so just to be the devil's advocate here too, and speaking to the audience as well here.
Yeah.
The thing about the vaccine, because you mentioned Cliff's video, the Next Level Woo, I believe it was.
Right.
Now, in a previous video to that, Cliff had explained, let's talk about a few inconsistencies. You mentioned a few, let's address them one by one. And not to say whether they're right or wrong, but just to say that these are the things that, as adults, we can look at and debate. And again, not be married to the outcome here. We're just trying to figure things out. And there are some things that still could be complicated. So let's say that. So on the Trump thing, pushing the vaccine, in one of Cliff's previous videos, previous to the one you're talking about, he suggested that based on his understanding, again, that's his point of view, you have yours, I have mine, and the audience has theirs as well. He suggested that perhaps him pushing the vaccine was actually a strategic move to accelerate the outcome of these companies who already had these in stock ready to go, because this was originally a 5-year plan, and he forced them to put it all in 2020 or 2021, making the results, as you're saying now, more visible to everyone, waking up more people, and thus saving millions of lives in the process, even though knowing that some would eventually take this and perhaps become casualties of war. And so, as an opinion, Cliff postulated that it's like a general asking soldiers to invade Normandy Beach, knowing full well they're going to lose a lot of people there, but they're going to win the bigger objective. And so you say you can't be angry at Trump for saying that, no more could you be angry at the general ordering those troops on Normandy Beach. So that's one point of view. So for the audience listening, okay, I understand what you're saying. So based on that too, I look at that and I said, it's plausible. I don't know. I'm not in the back room. I don't know who decided and what decided. It's plausible. But I also have a little voice on my shoulder that says, yeah, but it's almost too cute to be true. Or yeah, I don't know. Like we've had so many of these deceptions over the last number of years that we wake up to that is lie after lie after lie. And I'm not talking about Trump right now, but just in general, there's a certain point our psyche is like, can we trust anything? We have to question everything, right? And this is the conversation that Penny and I are having right now. So if you're having difficulty listening to that, you don't have to watch the show, guys. I get it. We're just trying to see every angle here, because at the end of the day, I think the main point is what Penny is also saying is there's no external savior. We are the cavalry. We're the people we have to count on, not so-and-so's return, not so-and-so's departure, not this, like we have to make this happen. And I think what she's saying in her message there is we're very close to that human collectiveness, hitting that higher resonance where we're all on the same page, maybe for the first time in humanity. That's exciting. I'd like to focus on that. That is. Okay, but let's go back to that example. What would you say to that counter argument or that other position that Cliff I postulated, which is contrary to yours? How would we
I have an answer.
Navigate that for the audience.
Okay, so when you study history, or you study religion, or you study, we'll just leave it with those two things for now, okay?
Okay.
One of the things I have noted about both those two areas, religion and history, is that everything that we have been told is basically not true. And yet there's a little bit of truth woven through, a little bit of thread. You have to sift out a lot of stuff in order to get to that little bit of truth. But what I have observed over and over again is people get confronted with something that turns out to be either fraudulent, or maybe it is like, what is it, cognitive dissonance. It's not what they want to hear. And they end up constructing a theory that makes it fit. And I've seen that over and over and over in my research and my studies for the last 2 decades, how we have made stuff fit that wasn't true at all, because we wanted it to be true, or we were told we needed to believe it, or we were told this was how it was, etc. That making up something to make it fit is how we get the craziness that we've got now.
And going back to Cliff, also, I watch a lot of his stuff. Maybe I have more time than you, but I love.
Yeah, you probably do.
I do. But speaking to what you just said, I think a lot of people in the Trump community, if they're intellectually honest, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, they also have to admit that a lot of the goalposts that were set in the last year, by this date, this will happen by this date. These were all these people wishing it to come true, not necessarily because the military or the white hats were actually choosing these dates. As Cliff was saying in his video, you do a move, there's a counter move, there's a counter. Nobody knows any dates, really. And on top of that, we're dealing with competing timelines.
I know.
And so a lot of the community are maybe guilty of saying, oh, well, he said this, but he meant that, and the 17th letter group meant that, and okay, so by this date, and then they keep setting themselves up to fail. And at a certain point, we have this fatigue. And I hear you guys. I'm fatigued also with all of these goalposts being moved. I'm like, okay, when do we get to really the brass tacks? And I think, again, what Penny's killing is what Penny is saying is we're very close to that brass tacks, and it has nothing to do with the departure and the arrival. It has to do with human consciousness and us finally gelling and being on the same page. And that's what the controllers are afraid of. When we decide, hey, we're together, we're all on the same track, and nobody's going to deter us, we know what we want, then it's getting over for them. That's really the big conversation here.
That is. You're right. Yeah. Okay. And I just saw a comment from somebody who said, Mr. T might not be perfect, but he red pilled us bigly. And I was like, yeah, he sure did. And I appreciate that as well. It was a wake up call for us to see that. Now, maybe, you know, there's explanations that we don't see. Maybe we just, you know, we haven't gotten the truth from anybody. So if we can just make space for some of those holes or some of those things that don't line up and create holes in our picture, then we can fill those in later if and when we do ever get the truth.
Right.
But I just think that at this point in time, we really have to stand back and say, let's take another look. What are we doing here? Where are we going? What is this going to look like?
It's never a bad thing to, en français, on say remise en question, to bring back into question what you think you know, especially in this time, this fog of war that we've, like, you have to make sure that those planks you're walking on are solid. And it's not because somebody gave you that plank 6 months ago that it's still valid today. And even if you made that plank 6 months ago, you did not have the data you have today. So again, this is why we're having this conversation, folks. It's just an adult conversation. We're friendly here. Let's bring up another point of inconsistency that you mentioned. I think it's good for the audience to have this conversation. You said, how was it possible that Mr. T was, I'm just paraphrasing here, was able to unrig the first election, but was not able to unrig the second one? Now, to that point again, because you brought up Cliff, I'll bring his counterpoint into it. But there's many more out there, but just for this conversation, Cliff was of the opinion that they had to unrig the first one to slow down basically the balkanization of the United States, which would have happened under the other woman who was supposed to win that election. So that was priority number one. And then they had to not unrig the second election in order for the populace to see the steal and eventually wake up to that and then decide for themselves what type of new governance structures they wanted. So they had to let it go. So to expose all of these people and everybody else that they didn't know maybe were also working on that side. Now they're all committed and they're in full view of everybody watching the news now. So that's a counterpart or an explanation that could explain why he didn't unrig the second one. What would you say to that?
Okay, so I agree with that. And maybe that was part of the red pilling process that had to happen. However, when you get to the point that we're at now, then the question becomes, okay, if he was trying to teach us a lesson, when is too much? When do we hit too much? And I would think that with the V shot and what it's obviously doing, he would say, okay, this lesson has gone far enough. So how, you know, when is enough enough? And if he's not on the up and up, and the whole goal is he's in cahoots with the some other part of the cabal or some group of players that we don't even know about. For all we know, there's others. That whole thing is really, how do we know that? Number one. And when if he comes back, what are we looking for? And you know, how do we get out of the mess that we're in with an entirely collapsed economy, sick people all over the place? Shouldn't the experiment or the red pilling have ended 4 months ago? You would think.
Okay, so let's not confuse two things here. I'm with you. I'm tracking with you here, but I'm going to take notes so we don't miss any points here.
Yeah.
I think what we're doing is absolutely valuable, and I hope we don't get censored out of this episode here, because I think it's actually valuable. So I'll watch my words, and I'll ask you to watch your words also.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of that first lesson, we just talked about unrigging, or not being able to unrig the second one. So let's let the V shot for a second on the side here. I would agree with you at this point that there's enough Americans who've woken up that they're, again, I'll watch my words here, right? So why do we have to wait till September or October or whatever we're in now? We probably knew this in February or March or April at the very least, right? So why is that taking so long? I get it. But again, I would say there might be pieces to that we still don't understand. There might be some still strategic defense concern, maybe from the military, and they have to get all their ducks in order and before they announce that, so that they can still defend the position of the government from outside sources while there's all this chaos to be announced. Maybe, I don't know. But again, it seems suspicious to me that we've been waiting this long, seeing as we're being told that there is this white hat cabal working at this for decades. Then they should have known that last year, or 4 years ago.
They did.
Right.
They did.
Exactly. So that, again, I agree with you. There's a delay there. So there's question as to why it's taking so much time. But I want to leave some room to, but there's still maybe elements we don't know. There might be some off-world interference. There might be, again, the strategic defense stuff, which again is very convenient for them to quote. It's like, oh, that's national security, can't talk about it. They've used that a lot on us, and it was like we never get to the truth, and they use that as cover for all the shenanigans. I get it. So that's frustrating. Now, in terms of the V, there are reports, and again, Cliff is one of them, but there's more that suggest that right now there is delays in the administration of the V going around the planet, from the military, from the frontline doctors, nurses, people who work in these institutions who are maybe sabotaging the batches. That was the Sabo Wu that Cliff was talking about. So maybe in that sense also there is some type of reprieve there that Mr. T and other company know about, and that's why they're not so stressed about that. And there's also the possibility that they are in possession already of something to counter effect some of the results of the V. And that has not yet been announced, and they know that that's possible yet. So again, there might be pieces there that we're not aware of. But with you again on that, how much more of this can we take? Now, if you look at the lockdowns, everything that's happening in Australia, if you look at our prime minister right now in election, his rhetoric for the last couple of days has cranked up on that. Like wow, it's very surprising to see. And we're asking everybody's why? How come? Where does this all land? So I get your frustration there too. Me too. But I can't say, oh, it's all another ruse. I think it's all a ruse. First of all, everything is a ruse. And I'm not talking about Mr. T. Yes, him including, but everything else included. It's all a big show. It's all a big show. And we're not privy to a lot of the information. So I think it changes again when human consciousness connects to that higher percentage. And suddenly we all know what we know. This is that moment we're looking for. So on those 3 points, anything else you want to share?
I've got
and the V.
Okay, January 6th. Can we talk about January 6th?
Sure.
Okay. That's not going to get us cut off, is it? So this is me back in December. I'm listening. Oh, we're going to have this rally on January 6th. And this is a big date, big deal, blah, blah, blah. And Trump's come to Washington, and I'm like, Trump, are you stupid? What are you doing? You're drawing all these people there. This is a setup of some kind. I knew it. I could feel it. So the 6th comes, and I'm watching, and I don't do this very often. I'm watching him live. Come on, number one, getting out onto the podium. It's got glass or bulletproof glass all around him. I've never seen that before. And my comment at that time was, that's a psychological statement. That isn't bulletproof glass for his for his benefit. It's for our psychological effect. Oh, I need to watch and make sure somebody doesn't take me out. But then, he gives his talk. He didn't say anything that he couldn't have said and hadn't said before. And then he says, let's go down to the State House or whatever it is, the Capitol building. And my thought at the time was, why are you doing this? What? And there was such a cautionary air about what he was saying, and very carefully chosen words. And I was picking that up, thinking something is not right here. And then, of course, we had the whole debacle at the Capitol, and people got hurt and jailed and all kinds of stuff. And he knew that was going to happen. He knew that. And you could tell by the tone of his voice. You could tell by the way that he was acting. He was late. I was like, why is he late? It's 40 minutes past when he was going to talk. And when you ask a question as an intuitive, you get an answer. And the answer that came was, he's waiting for all the setup to be in place. And so I'm making excuses in my own head. Oh, yeah, well, he's got to set it up so everybody's safe, so we're safe. And then all of that. Later, that answer was like, so who was setting up what? And, that just hasn't set well with me at all. All of the stuff that was being said right up until the morning of January 20th, not a single response to that. Mm-hmm. Nothing that made any sense. Why? Nothing except the same old stuff, And I don't want to say it because we're liable to get, that this election was blah, blah.
Right.
So, why January 6th? What, that's another thing. So there's talk on other channels that that General Berger said, not my Marines, they're not getting the V. Mm-hmm. Well, the story came out today on USA Today that said that was absolutely not true. Mm-hmm. That he never said that. He's absolutely for the vaccines. I'm like, who's telling the truth? Yeah. Real Raw News, who put out the story first, that Berger said, no, you're not vaccinating. Whoops, my Marines. Or USA Today, mm-hmm. saying that story was not true. It was, that it was made up. So the confusion is that I see being ramped up is deliberate. Mm-hmm. There's a perfect example of it right there. Why? Mm-hmm. Why? What are we being set up for? And consider this. If you take all of that Trump mania, imagine turning that around. Turn that around. What happens if we lose that thing that we're hanging on to with him? What happens?
Well, okay, that's a great question. I have to give you that one too, because a lot of conservatives out there say the same thing on the other side. They say, oh my God, if Mr. T comes back, the Dems are going to lose their shit. Okay, sure. That's one part of the equation. But what Penny's killing is, what if there's a setup on the other side as well? What are all these enlightened patriots, people who believe in free speech, freedom, free markets, and all these things? What are they going to do if they realize, if potentially what we're suggesting here could happen, that there's something there that we still don't know, and when we do, we realize that maybe, oh my God, we've been conned again. And listen, I did this show a year and a half ago, and of course it was deleted by YouTube. But I was asking that question: is it possible? Like, guys, don't shoot me. Are we again being conned? And in that show, I talked about the first administration, the Bush administration, about the weapons of mass destruction, how we were being conned for 4 years, and a lot of our young people went into the Marines and all of this stuff. They came back in body bags, all for a big con. And then we had the next con. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Okay. Oh my God, everything's going to be perfect. He's going to pay my mortgage. And if you want your doctor, you can keep your doctor. All of that stuff. And everybody kept telling me, oh, don't worry, JC. He'll do it in the midterms. Oh, don't worry, JC. He'll do it in the second term because he had to play the game in the first term, but in the second term, he'll do it. And then finally, nothing. So it wasn't a yes, we can. It was like, no, we can't. So I asked the question after seeing all of that and trying to not be partisan, right? Just looking at what I'm seeing. Is it possible that this was the next, as Cliff said, the next level woo? Was this the next level con, which introduced the character, what Cliff calls the poet, so the 17 letter guys, as an instrument to up the ante on this con? And to some extent, yes, this was a big psychological operation. Now, whether or not that was for our highest good, for me personally today, I would still say remains yet to be seen. I've been waiting, and there's been a lot of disappointments with a lot of those drops, just to say that way, in terms of the timing and the outcomes and all of that stuff. And again, being a student of everything I've seen over the last 20 years or so, I just mentioned since 2001, but we can go even further. Nixon conned us when he said, very temporarily are we disconnecting from the goal, just very temporarily. Here we are 50 years later. So talk about another long con. That people have to realize, oh yeah, it's one con after another. So it's still very human to be asking right now, are we still in a con? Is it because we want to believe something that we're making it true, or we're actually looking at the pieces around of the puzzle that's forming around us? And right now, so let's go back to what you mentioned. So let me bring this one back up here. This is a key turning point. And I was looking at this the other day too, and I was asking the question, again, not saying one way or another. I said, is this the media now just got the message, you know, how they get the message in their ear and then they read the teleprompter from the higher ups, whoever those people are controlling them. Okay, we've decided now that Mr. B has to go and we want to put Kamala in. So I said, is that one of the scenarios? Because we've heard this before and we've had the predictive programming for the last 6 months where, oh, it's President Kamala, you know, or the Kamala Biden presidency, and like, no, it's the other way around, guys. So they've been telling us that's what they've been wanting to do. So is that what was just triggered, or is it what you're saying now that perhaps the controllers here are setting us up to maybe the other return, only to maybe undress Mr. T when he comes back to again dissuade or discourage the population or bring that frequency down? Which is it? I don't know at this point. What are your thoughts?
I don't see Kamala Harris being president, not even for a minute.
And neither does Benin, by the way. She pulled cards and she says, there's no way it's not going to be her. So whoever thinks it's her, it's not her. We didn't know who it was, but she says it's not her.
When I try to see that, I see that Biden is gone and so is she. It's like, so what happened there? But then when I go further to see, okay, who is it? Who's the president? There isn't one. It's like, okay, what happened there? I don't know. So I keep going back to look. At some point in time, there'll be an answer, you know, and it's usually going to be something that, you know, it's at some moment when I didn't expect. All of a sudden, I'm totally clear. You know, if sometimes when you're trying to get an answer, or you're trying to see something, and you got biases, or you've got worries, or you've got concerns about what you want, you can't get any information that comes through clearly, because then you'll say, well, did I just see that because I want to? Because that's what I really want. So you have to keep asking the question and holding that. And then there'll come a moment when the vision appears, and you're totally thinking about something else, and all you see this and like, oh, and it's free of all bias, and that you can trust. That has not happened yet around, well, who's in there? My concern is that, you know, that we're going to end up with some sort of military thing. That I don't know if that's the case or what. But it just that vision that came when I was chopping carrots the other night. And Cliffy said that now November 11th is one of their dates, and we have language in the I don't know, his reports that say that this is about the unvarying. And I have thought, all the way along, that there's where's all the story and the history, the true history about Trump? The web seems to have been scrubbed of all of that long before he came on board, or it's not available to us. Only really good stuff is available. That seems to me that's a little bit.
Well, there was some bad stuff. I mean, the thing about grabbing them by the pussy, the tax stuff, and there was some. They've been after him for quite a bit of bad stuff. But I agree.
Right.
They might have cleaned them up before running. And again, there too, some would argue, well, yes, this were the good guys. They were trying to put a new guy into place. They, of course, had to, put their best foot forward and all of that stuff. I understand that in politics that could be. But what is hidden there? We don't know.
We don't.
We just don't know. That's the truth. I don't know. I mean, I personally don't. If you're watching the show and you said you absolutely do know, okay, great. That's good for you. But if you're saying because you watch CNN, I would suggest you probably don't know. I mean, we know what we're being presented in this whole show. That's all we know. I don't personally know Trump. I haven't been, invited to dinner at his house. I haven't been playing golf with him for 40 years. I just don't know. I couldn't say either way. Like Penny is saying, I like that he's awakened a lot of people. I like that he's brought that spirit back of patriotism back to North America. I like that he was at least with his rhetoric talking about free speech. And again, we see the lawsuit that he just put in recently, which I think is a big thing. Of course, Penny and I are in this business of trying to promote free speech. We absolutely appreciate that. But we don't know still if this is just another big con. Part of me wants to say, well, there's two things. Okay, first let me adjust a comment on the screen. Danielle says, JC, Penny once said, it is the ultimate test of us as a population if we can be discerning in choosing of our rulers.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's key here, and that's what we're talking about. And I think I want to say Penny Kelly, and I'm saying it in one word. So it's been a long week, folks.
People call me Kelly all the time.
Okay, it's been a long week, folks, and this is a challenging conversation for me to think in French and to be as fast and communicate that in English. But I agree with that statement, Danielle, and I think this is what we're getting to. We might not need Mr. T. This might not be the new models. We're moving into this whole new age, this age of Aquarius. And all the structures that we're seeing crumble now, they must crumble because they were born out of these old frequencies. So why are we trying to reimplant that same structure into this new earth? And that's what a lot of people are saying when they say, oh, we need Mr. T to come back, everything will be fine. No, it won't.
No.
By design, it won't be fine. We're talking about new energies, and we're the ones now who have to create these new structures. We can't put in place the same old structures in this new world. What do you think of that, Penny?
Absolutely. The whole thing.
I feel like a televangelist. Praise the Lord. I don't mean to be preaching, guys, but I am passionate, as you can see, about this.
Okay, maybe we are part-time preachers in a former life.
But again, I'm so passionate, and it's not about I'm Canadian, but we're humans. We're all in this together, and what's happening in the States is happening around the planet right now.
Yes.
We all have to be passionate about our future, but we can't be delusional. And there's two different things here. Hold on a second, Penny. I want to say this. Yes, hope is good. Hope is absolutely powerful. Absolutely. But you can't be delusional at the same time, right? So you have to be able to do, in French, la remise en question, to rethink what you think you know. Hope is amazing. But you can't ignore reality. You can ignore it, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality, as Cliff says.
Yeah.
All right.
Man.
Okay, so go back to these structures here. This is the big point we have to figure out. So we're trying to fix something. We're not going to fix the old. That we have to get out of that mentality. We have to create the new.
Right.
And bringing back Mr. T, to me, is an example or version of fixing the old and holding on to the old.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And let me ask another question. Let's bring another thing into this. it's probably not well known that the Fed is pretty much it's done for. It doesn't have the right to print money anymore. Well, it does print money. It doesn't have, I mean, there's so many things about the Fed that have changed that have not been announced. I'm not even qualified to talk about the Fed, so probably I should shut up about that. But what I see when I get to October is there's no money. There's no money. There's no, there's nothing for anybody in the old system to hang on to. They're not getting paid. A lot of people who have been, I'm going to say that they have worked on behalf of the system, contractors, things like that, they're not going to get paid. What do we do with that? How can we have a system without any money? And where is that money, and who's in charge of whatever money we did have? Where's the gold? Where's the silver? You know, what I see happening is that cryptos go up dramatically to the end of the year. And then after November, maybe December, they hit a high, and then they go down. They go down fairly drastically. And I'm like, why? What happens there? I don't know. But you know, that whole business of what's going on with the money is that's a major consideration. And if our government doesn't have any money, we don't really have a working government. So how do we handle that? What do we do with that? If that brings down the rest of the government, there's people out there that are forming new forms of governance, local governance all around the planet. They are, and they're passionate about that. There's a group that's been meeting for at least a couple of years on, quote, the next economy. You know, nobody's really looking to restore what we had, because what we had was so corrupt. So when do we face that? How do we face that?
Right. Okay, so first of all, Merkaba 365, I see you. You don't need to repeat it 100 times. We're having a conversation. There's only so much bandwidth I have. I'll get to that. And there's a discrepancy between Cliff's latest post and also Realist News or Joe's post. But I think I know what you're talking about. I'll get to that in a second. So hold on. Okay. Now, with respect to the economy, you and Cliff are on the same page. You're both saying the same thing. Something's happening to the financial system. Something happening to the money. I think we're at the debt ceiling again right now. And what seems to be occurring also is that China is not going to roll over this debt one more time. They're done with this. They've already distanced themselves from Mr. B. So it could very well be that we're at the end of that. And what we're seeing right now, people having to pay $2,000 to get out of, or whatever it was to get out of Afghanistan here in the last couple of days. This was in Redbot data reports way back when, where soldiers and military people would have to pay to struggle to get back home after this weird collapse of the dollar. And so it seems to be happening now. And like, these are all temporal markers, as he's talking about, are hitting us right now. Now, he said the same thing about the money here in my last interview with him. And he also talked about gold and silver and crypto. He also sees that big drop. I believe it's in December with crypto. So we're going to have this huge run up from now, and then this huge drop, maybe 90% is what he told me, if I didn't get that wrong. Now, what he said, though, is that everything is going to change with respect to gold and silver. There's a veritasium in there, too, that will be maybe part and parcel of the new system. At some point, we can get back into that, and I'll ask Cliff for more details when he comes back on. But for gold and silver, he said there's so much gold hanging around that's what we're going to use for some time, and also physical paper, because this digital stuff won't happen anymore. It's not there. These banks are all going kaput. So, and silver, again, is the absolute best thing you can look at right now, silver. And he said people who are going to keep it and not sell it or not be tempted, because they're going to come up with all of these schemes to get the silver from you. The people who keep it, oh my God, they're going to have generational wealth like you haven't seen before. And he actually went as far as to say, oh my God, right now, at the price we're seeing silver, they're paying you to buy silver. So again, we had that $600 web bot price for silver in that same year where Bitcoin hit 64,000 and then retrenched by half. We've already gone through that temporal marker. So we're in that year now. So this is before Christmas. And he said, but $600 is not the end price. That's just the opening salvo. So where silver goes, we talked about parity and then even maybe surpassing the price of gold.
Yeah.
And now the price of gold, not the 2000 it's at today. We're talking about astronomical numbers, just as Jim Sinclair is talking about. Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter at JS Mindset, they were doing these calculations back in February, I think, of this year. And at that time, with the admitted to money supply that had been printed, they were looking at $97,000 or $96,000 per ounce gold. And that was just doing the same math that Jim Sinclair did back in the 80s when he predicted that gold would go from $35 to $800, and he got it within a dollar. So again, these are very smart people, and they're seeing the writing on the wall. So for the economy, I think we're all on the same page here. And again, the economy that we have now is a system of the old energy. We're moving into a whole new world.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
We just had to say this because a lot of people are saying, okay, but JC, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Breathe. Just breathe. Idiot, I was breathing just before the show.
Yeah.
Breathe, everyone. We're going to get through this. And I think what's exciting, and maybe we can focus on this. We're already an hour into the show, Penny, but I love this conversation. And judging from most of the audience here, they appreciate the fact that we're just trying to figure it out. That we're not, trying to, toot one parade or another parade. No, we're just trying to figure things out.
That's right.
And that's our job. That's why we're here. We're trying to figure things out, right? That's our whole mission.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So let's talk about that. I want to call it almost that singularity moment where human consciousness hits that, whatever that percentage is, that really locks us in. There's no need for internet. We're all on that same page. Right. When does that happen? Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. A couple of months ago, you and I had some conversations about groups on the planet right now working and being in communication with some other ET races who were looking for our highest good or working on our behalf, or at least trying to help us.
Right.
Not do everything for us, but be there to support us in our trajectory that we're on now. Can you talk about that a little bit more now? Because I know at that point it was difficult for you to share that information. And then how does that relate to that singularity moment when we're all on that same page together?
Okay. Well, wow. Okay, where to begin, or even just where to jump in the middle. Yes, there are people, other people, I'm beginning to call them OPs instead of ETs, okay? Because they're really not extraterrestrial in the strictest sense of the word. They live here, and they've been out of sight and out of the way for a long time. Until we started, detonating nuclear bombs and things like that. So just know that, yes, there are other people, there are OPs here, and they are working with us, directing some of us, etc., in a very consistent manner. And there's some things that I would like to say, but I don't want to shock people. So let me say this: the people who are the OPs are older, they're wiser, they are more experienced, they have developed themselves to an extraordinary degree. They have developed their technology and their responsibility with that technology. It isn't all about war. That is a big issue for us. We have to get away from only developing technology for war purposes and skipping all of the good stuff. Yes, we need to defend ourselves. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And some of the most spiritual nations out there, civilizations, have astounding weaponry. And nobody messes with them because they have astounding weaponry, but they don't use it for war purposes. They use it for what I'm going to call humanitarian reasons or projects or things like that. People get into trouble on various planets. So So the goal from their point of view is for us to grow up. It's for us to begin to manage our consciousness and to manage ourselves as a planet, to come together and be of not of one mind, but to be of one goal, which is peace and development of consciousness, because that's where real power is. And humanity has a very extraordinary destiny. Humanity, meaning earthling humanities, are people, humans. And the goal is to remain somewhat physical, and yet to enter into the power of the light and to be able to use that light. Because I was just talking about this in my class today. Sometimes a civilization will remain totally physical, and they'll develop their technology to an extraordinary degree, and their consciousness, but they don't become light. And then there's other civilizations that abandon the 3D physical stuff and just become light. There's very few civilizations that are able to handle both. And that's our destiny, is handling both, because it's such a pleasure to be in a 3D system because of the intensity of the experiences here. You know, the food, the money, the wine, the sex, the smell of flowers, you know, immersing yourself in the ocean and swimming. Those kinds of things are not available in other places. So maintaining a 3D world is big work, and evolving yourself at the same time. It's an astounding kind of goal or destiny. So having said that, now, you know, put all that aside. We have people who know that that's our destiny and that that's what we are headed toward. And they're trying to nurture us. They're trying, and they won't do it for us, but they will support. And they have, we'll say, lent us some direction. And these are good people. There are some that have not been honest. The government has been working with OPs that are not honest. They're not honorable. Okay. And that's a problem. We have to get out of that, clean that up, etc. Some of them have left. A lot of the rest are planning to leave, and we're left with one another. But a lot of people have been corrupted. And so now we have to clean up our own people. So in the long and the short of it, we have been to people have been to other planets, other places. People continuously come here. They're coming, you know, when I was in Ecuador, they were all over. They're in Peru, they're in Brazil, they're in Argentina, they're in the US, they're in Canada, they're especially in the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains. They're all over the planet. And that's just because we're blind, deaf, and dumb doesn't mean that they are. And we have not taken it upon ourselves to either be inviting or to say, come on, let's talk, let's meet. And they consider us to be people who have no self-control. Right. So it's kind of like going into the pasture with one of the bulls, and who's still a full bull, and is not a steer. And so you end up putting your life at risk. That's how they consider us. They would put themselves at risk. So, so now let me stop rattling on, and just say that, yes, there are others here. We have through them access to extraordinary information and extraordinary tools, let's say tools, and extraordinary possibilities. And those are unfolding as I speak. And I think that's really all I want to say at this point. There's probably some more I could say.
Okay, that's very good. I'm going to question you on one part of there you just mentioned. It's a delicate subject too, but it's in the same context of the conversation we're having today about are we being conned? And so you just
Yeah.
said that there are some OPs, as you call them,
Yep.
that haven't been really good to us and that have been working with some of our governments and maybe pretending to be something they were not. Again, I'm paraphrasing here, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. So I want to bring this up because this struck me when I was going through my awakening process. This is maybe 10 years ago. It's an interview between Carrie Cassidy and
Yeah.
Dr. Stephen Greer. And at
Right.
the time, Stephen Greer's position here in this interview was that there was no such thing as a bad ET. They were all love and light.
I know.
And you could see Carrie from her position, she's like, "Whoa, hold on there. Hold on, buddy. That's not true." And that's
Oh,
irresponsible of you to even say that to the audience, right? So that was, guys, go check out this interview. It was absolutely fabulous.
okay.
But when I saw that, it always struck to me too that we would eventually get to this position where perhaps we're getting closer to that date now, here where we are in 2021, where we're going to be faced with maybe a situation like here's the new boss, same as the old boss. Somebody in the show earlier said, "Hey, yes, JC, the Galactic Federation." This every person I've had on the screen on this show have talked to me. A few people are of the opinion that they're absolutely all love and light. Everybody else said, JC, it's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
There's some factions in there that change their mind. They also have different agendas. And okay, so if anybody's telling you, like Stephen Greer was in this interview, that everybody's love and light, maybe the first reaction you should have as a human is to say, hold on a second. Let me test that for myself before I walk in and invite them over to dinner, right?
Yeah. Very good.
Let's talk about that now. I know we can't talk about some of the ongoing things you're just talking about now, but talk about this discernment and what seems to be a big push in this community right now to make us believe that either the Ashtar Command is full of light, the Galactic Federation is full of light, that there's no such thing as bad ETs. They're all working for our highest good. What do you know about that stuff, and what can you at least give in terms of warning to the people? And this is not a warning to say, hey, don't trust any ET. We're just saying, no, again, like everything else, we, as of yet, most of us humans, don't have the ability to discern the OPs in front of us. We haven't had the opportunity to learn. So we don't know the different nuances. When I meet Penny, I can smell her, I can feel her energy, I can look at her body language, all of these cues that my body has learned to discern whether or not the person is good or bad. I don't have yet for all these, not just for another race, but let alone millions of other races. So we are all going to have to be schooled there. And so my big issue with the people saying that they're all love and light right now, as Stephen Greer was trying to inculcate to Carrie Cassidy here, is, it could be a little bit more complicated. And maybe we should, be a little bit more careful here because we're kind of new at this. What do you say, Penny?
Well, so what I know, I really like Stephen Greer. I love the fact that he wants to think that all of the OPs are good and love and light and all of that. And maybe all the ones he deals with are exactly like that. And quite a few of them are, frankly. But the way that I know is that how some of them operate that are less than honorable, or that have made a lot of bad choices on their own planet, a lot of bad choices. And so they've either, some of them have destroyed their world, or their world is so miserable they don't want to be there. And so they have taken up working with some ETs that are very aggressive. And I call those ETs, the aggressive ones. So what we end up with, or what we've seen, is that the people who really don't have a working planet, or they're not happy with what they've created, they want to go somewhere else, and so they end up making deals with the ETs that are really aggressive, that are colonizers. And they will go in and they try to meet with the people who are in power on the planet. That would be our government, or any government. And they have this story of, we need a place to stay, and we, et cetera. we're trying to renew our planet. We're trying to restore our population. Could we just get a few eggs and sperm from you guys? Can we, can we borrow a few animals with their tissues and their blood? We just want to do some research, and we'll share our technology with you. That's the deal. Yeah. And so they end up with this. The government makes an agreement, and then these kind of less than honorable ETs kind of come in, and they're very peaceable, and they're very laid back, and they stay out of sight, and they start their research, and they pick up some people, and they borrow some eggs and sperm, and some animals and things like that. But what they're doing is really hybridizing the population for those who are colonizers. And so we end up with people who are part human, earth humans, and part something else. And you get enough of those going, then you begin to be able to manipulate those. And you end up, long story short, and this usually happens over hundreds, if not a couple thousand years, maybe even 5 or more thousand years. And you have a population of people who are now of mixed blood, we'll say, and they are, the colonizers start moving in, and I think on the last show I might have said, when you hear the word corporate introduced into a population, when the concept of a corporation is introduced, that's one of the signs. When money is introduced into a population, money creates competition, serious competition, and destruction of a lot of values. The word corporate becomes a corporation. Corpus means body. And so this is a body of businessmen, and they try to get rights, and pretty soon the corporation has rights, and the body of the corporate body begins to displace the humans, and the humans are losing rights. The corporations are gaining rights. In the meantime, now the big ETs are getting involved in taking over the whole planet, and you get involved with robots, AI, transhumanism types of concept. And pretty soon, whoops, the humans all gone. So that process all that is just to say that there are people who are very aggressive and who have less than honorable deals that they make, where they don't say what the whole deal is. They're front. They're a front for somebody else that they're working for in an attempt to be able to find a place for themselves. And I'm going to say this: people across the cosmos are very similar. Very similar. It is amazing. The variety, the reasons, the different ways of doing their planet or setting up their civilization. It's astounding. It's awe-inspiring in many ways. It's beautiful in many ways, and some is not so beautiful. But when you get planets that are in trouble, let's talk about the solar flash for a minute. Let's say that we're going to have a solar flash in 2029 or 2032 or something there. That's a huge geophysical threat to the entire planet. To people who can get off the planet, it's like, well, we're leaving, we're going on vacation, we'll see you later. To people who live in the planet, it's like, we're going underground. We'll be back when we see what the configuration is, what's left up top. The people on the surface are at risk. So we have people who really could, who really commit to helping when there's a major planetary or geophysical change happening, or sometimes a planet is in trouble. or a son is in trouble, we know so little about what actually happens beyond our front door and our front yard that it is pathetic. And so there are, just all that to say that there are groups that just keep an eye on what's happening. They map the cosmos. They keep track of what's happening with different planets and different solar systems and different suns. We don't even think about that kind of stuff. We're not even there, but there's a lot of interest in the people of Earth because of our unique destiny to be these physical, spiritual beings, which we already are to a huge extent, but the potential for development is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so those people come around and try to help when there's a problem. And that's all they do. Others just want a place, quiet place to be. And we have enclaves around the planet of people that are from other places. Some of them are different enough that you notice them, you recognize them. They do try to disguise themselves and fit in. They want to fit in the same way that all 6th and 7th and 8th graders want to fit in to their group of friends, their class. People want to fit in. People that are here who can come and go from the planet have extraordinary gifts for us. Are some of them not honorable? Yes, that's true.
Okay, I really appreciate everything you just said. I have to push back a little bit more on to everybody who don't have those experiences to say everything is positive, don't worry, everything is love and light. To me, I had issue with that, and I still today. And maybe I misunderstood his comments, but I believe that that is what he was trying to get across with Carrie there, and also Carrie was having issue with that as well.
Yeah.
So at the very least, let's go back here to the comment on the screen, because Carole says, how did the topic go from silver to the financial system to the politics to talk about ETs?
Okay.
There's a reason. It's all connected. It's very much all connected.
Let me just make a comment about that. There are people, OPs, who are here trying to help us reestablish ourselves on a more ethical basis. On a basis that allows us, since everybody is dependent on money and nobody has the skills of survival anymore, they recognize that money has to be there for a while, and that we're going to hit the wall around money. What do we do? So in a sense, it's all kind of connected. We kind of started out talking about the financial system and what was happening there. But there is guidance coming from OPs that is very, very powerful in terms of what we need to know and what we ought to think about doing and things like that. So.
Right. Well, that's very good, and I'm with you on that too, and that's what I want to focus on that. But again, for the newbies, I want to say again, discernment. We've just had this whole first hour of the show talking about all of these cons that we have suffered. We don't want to suffer yet another one when we're this close to maybe switching gears here and having empowerment for humanity. This is where we're at. Okay, M. Lansing has a great question. Says, JC, what do you think about Cliff's saying that Mr. M, I'll just call him Mr. M for here, needs to leave? And so, Penny, you might not have seen this, but this was on Greg Hunter's interview with Cliff High. And Cliff was explaining that the grand prize that was promised to Mr. T was not to be president. It was, in fact, that after he did whatever he was supposed to do for the supposed good guys here in the play, that eventually the prize would be Mr. M's removal. And so I was like fascinated by that, but Greg Hunter just like, whoop, he kept going with the interview. I'm like, no, go back. That's important, folks. That's important. So what are your, again, very carefully here on the language, Penny, what are your thoughts on that here? That could have been one of the big prizes for what's going on right now in terms of exposing all of this stuff. We talked about the elections, the money systems, all of this stuff, to eventually maybe remove this entity.
I think he's removed
already.
When I said you know, the guys way up at the top, 40 layers up, have left, have been removed. In some cases, that's what I meant. So we're on our own here at this point. It's us, people. And if we can't find our way through the fog, we're just going to end up tearing ourselves apart and going down. And we don't need to do that. We just need to stay alert and aware and answer some questions and get answers that make sense. We can believe whatever we want, but the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And if we get into some pudding that is more like quicksand, we're in trouble. So I'm pretty sure that Mr. M is gone already, and some others with him as well. I'm pretty sure of that. So I think that is a huge freeing up of us. If we can see our own freedom and begin to use it wisely, then we can make our way through the maze. And we probably are going to have to deal, I know we're going to have to deal with some people who are probably going to have a big change of heart. Then, do we forgive? Will people forgive? There's that whole question.
A lot of people might not be able. And again, I was having this talk with Janine, and I think Cliff mentioned this in one of his videos too. Like, some of the things that these people have done are just maybe not forgivable, and we don't even know the extent of what they did yet. I had this debate with Janine the other day, and I was asking the audience, should humanity know 100% of all of these crimes? And everybody's saying 100, 100, 100. Everybody was like, yes, I want to know everything. And then we said, yeah, but what if you can't even fathom that, what it is you're asking for? And if you knew, you might say, oh, I'll take 80 is good enough. You know what I mean? What do you say to that right now? Because we are going to have to go through that exact process. This enlightenment, for the most part, is going to be beautiful for humanity moving forward, but there's going to be some difficult times ahead here for a lot of people to try to consolidate what they thought they knew with the reality that was truly before them.
So I would say a couple things. I think when I was talking to Jay Snip last week, one of the things that I mentioned was, when it comes to forgiveness, that's a tough question. And I was thinking about it afterwards, it becomes even more difficult to, how do I say this? To forgive and forget if some of your people are sick or dying or have died because of the behavior that, that some people perpetrated on others. And I saw a question in there, who's Mr. M? Mr. M is not Macron.
Just read up in the chat, folks. You'll know. So, many people responded who Mr. M was. And folks, just okay. Again, we can't get into too much details here. We're gonna have some troubles, but it is in this video. Penny and I went in full detail of this exploitation and takeover agenda in this video, and that's on the pay-per-view.
Very good. Okay.
All right, so going back to Cliff says here, no, actually, it will damage the normies. Maybe irreparably so. Again, there's so many things that people are saying. Oh, yes, I want to know.
Damage the normies.
Knowing 100%.
Oh God, yes.
The question I was asking there.
Yeah, I agree. I have had fears for a couple of years that all the truth was going to come out, and I think some people would never recover from that. And we need everybody on deck, everybody on board. And so that whole thing is that whole question of, if somebody that you love dearly, or your child or someone is dying because of the actions perpetrated by the people in power, can you forgive? And, Cliffy may be right. maybe we just can't. The other thing I started to say about, Jay Snip, talking to Jay Snip, was if you see, let me say it this way, we created this reality. We're the ones who have kind of ignored it and let it do whatever it did and got into this mess. And now we may need to see a lot in order to realize, whoa, that didn't work. And that didn't work. And that was SHIT. And this was, whatever. We may have to see more than we want, but I don't think we want to see it all. It's too painful. I've seen a little bit. I can't forget it. I can't get over it.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that I would wish on anybody else.
Right. And what you just mentioned also, and Cliff was alluding to this too, all the normies here, they're going to be lost as they go through this very, very quick and rude awakening compared to the people who have been, in this field for a long time. And this is why I did this video here called Battlefield Promotions. We're all there now. And because all of these people are going to wake up, they're going to need people like you watching the show here who've gotten your basic training and who can dare and hold that frequency and be compassionate to them. It's going to, but again, this is a positive thing. We're getting into this brave new world, this world of this age of Aquarius, and we are going to be charged with building our new structures. But for that, some of our leaders here have to know, as Penny just said, what didn't work and where we fucked up. Right? Amen. Amen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Betty, what a hell of a show. I had no idea you and I were going to be so passionate tonight. But that's amazing. And there was one comment earlier, and I want to thank them. They said, wow, thank you so much, guys, for having this open debate. It's important. It's triggering us into thinking and thinking about the bigger picture and not necessarily being in the belief or in the hope frequency, which is good, but at the same time being real about what's happening now is very important. That's where the empowerment is going to come. So I appreciate that comment from that viewer earlier. So Penny, in the last couple of minutes we have on the show, is there anything else, either from the look-see you just did or for something that's coming up maybe next week that you're forecasting that you want to share with the audience here that we missed maybe in our conversation? Oh, and I had to go back to Merkaba. I'll bring that question after, so I won't forget you.
Okay. Okay. All right. There's really nothing more that I would say about next week, but over the next month, keep your eyes and ears open to see how the pieces fit together, and don't brush away the pieces that don't fit. Why don't they fit? What is it we need to understand or to see? And I saw a little thing in the chat. Somebody said that Bill Gates and Trump were working together. I have seen that to some extent. I will say this. It looks like, and this is foolish, it looks like if that is the case, that Trump has been thinking he could pull out at the last minute, and that I don't think that's going to be possible. If he was foolish enough to get involved in what Gates is doing, that's not going to be good. Nobody's going to forgive that, especially when people are so sick. I see a lot of sick people over the winter. I've seen some things for my own family that I don't like at all. And I'm like, you bastard, you know, if I lose my people, I'm going to try and have mercy.
Try the operating word. And Cliff was saying too, he has relatives right now that are dying. So there's casualties of war here everywhere. And unfortunately, it appears that we're winning this war right now, but we haven't yet felt all the consequences. They're already maybe baked in the cake here. So we're going to have to go through some tough times. Okay, so Merkaba 365, you had two comments. One of them was this one. I'll start with the one from Realist News. Yes, that's interesting. This could be a rebellion of sorts from internal sources at the FBI. So that is big news. Again, it's going to be difficult for us to discuss this here on the Uncensored show, but folks, do go check that out. That was a tweet on Realist News here on Twitter. And maybe we can end on this one. Cliff was posting earlier today that this is the actual day where the over-woo has subsumed the narrative. The mainstream media is now on the defensive. This is what he was predicting here in the last couple of weeks. And MSN now faces will soon be saying unheard of words, trying to save themselves from the retribution that is coming. That's going to totally freak out the normies, absolutely. But you and I talked about this a week ago. We had this newspaper in Germany that put out a video apologizing for the deception of the story for the last year. And so can you imagine Wolf Blitzer apologizing for such a deception here on CNN? We could be very close to that moment now. And of course, now with Afghanistan and perhaps everything that's going with the Democratic Party, we're seeing now how absolutely irrelevant the mainstream is in all of their narrative. Nobody cares anymore. So we're at that point.
Yeah, that's true. I think the CNN report is more evidence of that turning, and the guys in the mainstream media are going to have to, they're going to have a lot of. We used to say a lot of splaining to do.
That's from I Love Lucy. You got some splaining to do.
Okay,
I love it.
All right.
All right. I love it. Oh, man. Folks, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Please do go and check out Consciousness on Fire, Penny Kelly's new website. And, of course, subscribe to her new newsletter here at the bottom of the page here. You can enter your email address absolutely free, and it'll stay you in touch and in tune with everything new from Penny Kelly, including the latest posts here for every upcoming look-see. And, of course, you can support her as well on her Patreon at patreon.com/Penny Kelly, and you can find all of her work for free on YouTube at Penny Kelly, also at 20,000 and strong and growing. Penny, any last words of wisdom before we go tonight?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about somebody in the yard, or somebody in the comment from the Navy Yard or something. I didn't catch it all, but it was, she's been all over with Mr. T. And the answer is yes. You don't marry a narrative. You don't wed yourself to something. You move and you get into every position and you look at something from every angle. Pro, con, maybe, maybe not, what if, etc. And you don't jump to premature conclusions. And right now, I'm in that place of, well, there's this to consider and there's that, and and I like this, but what about that? And in the end, that is what critical thinking is about. It's about weighing and balancing and, sitting with something, sleeping on it, chewing on it, talking with others. And eventually what comes through is the truth. That's what we're after, is that truth. Mm-hmm. So don't worry about having to pick a position. That's not healthy. It's not flexible. And right now we need flexibility, some fierce.
And I think to add to that too, people are not just married to their position, it becomes a reflection of themselves. And so when you challenge that belief, then you challenge their persona, their whole idea of who they are. So if we can divorce ourselves from our positions and be critically thinking about them, and I said in French, la remise en question, to always put back into question what you think you know, so that you're walking on very solid planks. This will be a critical skill moving forward here in this new age of Aquarius. All right, folks, thank you so much. Thank you, Penny. That was A Break in the Clouds with Penny Kelly, and we'll see her again probably in 2 or 3 weeks from now. Or in the meantime, if there's a lot more crazy woo going on, I'll call Penny and we'll have this other conversation with you guys.
I'm so sorry I couldn't be there the other night with the woo crew or whatever.
It was fun. Well, that's in 2 weeks from now. You're more than welcome if you want to come back for Jason. Right. I'll send Daphne the links, and you're always welcome to come on that show as well.
Okay.
Absolutely love you. All right. Thank you, Penny. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and have a great weekend. Au revoir.
Okay.